Thanks for tuning in to the second episode of the Aural Literature podcast. Aural Literature is a monthly program held at the Terrazas Branch on the last Wednesday of every month at 7 p.m. It's a public reading program where local writers have the opportunity to share their work. The purpose of the podcast edition of Aural Literature is to highlight the work of the writers themselves and stray away from traditional interviews. In this episode of the Aural Literature podcast, we'll be listening to poetry from Kimberly Lambright, Kathleen Reeves, and Meg Freitag. All three writers featured in this episode of the podcast are also reading together at Aural Literature in February 2016. Each writer will introduce themselves and then share their work.
My name is Meg Freitag. I graduated in May with my MFA from UT's Michener Center for Writers. For the past 3 years, I've been working on a manuscript called Edith, and 3 of the poems that I'm going to read today are from this manuscript. It is a kind of loosely themed manuscript, and it is a collection of elegies, I'd say, and the elegies are revolve around this theme of a girl trying to come to terms with the death of her pet bird. This first poem I'm going to read, though, is from a brand new manuscript. It's one of the poems that I've written since graduation. And this new manuscript is still very early on in the conceptual stages, and deals with some of the outlying themes that came up for me when I was working on the Edith manuscript that I wasn't able to really delve into because of the constraints of the project. Thank you so much to the Austin Public Library and to Andrew for bringing us all here today to read our poems. A history of dancing alone in my bedroom to the Romeo and Juliet soundtrack. I have seen so many horrible things in movies. Sometimes I think about who will die before me, what multitude of griefs I will have to endure if I want to live a long time, which I believe I do, and I feel the weight of 10,000 possible futures descending on me from the prehistoric sky. Not quite touching the top of my head, but rather as if resting on the roof of my car. I can drive anywhere I want, but can't get out. I've washed my hair with water that was 20,000 years old. I've eaten a hamburger that was made of dead stars, not even realizing it at the time. I've said awful things to people I've loved, things I would think impossible to say, but then there they are, hovering in the air above me like soap bubbles made out of someone else's skin. I've watched a man walk away from me, certain he would turn back around. I wasn't calling after him or anything, just having a feeling so big it seemed absurd that at least part of it didn't belong to him. Outer space freaks me out. It's not even that I believe in aliens, though I do, or even that I believe aliens are probably much smarter than me, but without the same understanding of sacredness, though I do. But really, it's how you can travel in a straight line for the rest of your life, never bumping into anything else ever again. I don't know what to do with what is happening in this world. I get these moments of panic that feel like they're turning my body inside out, just sitting on my bedroom floor, thinking about driving to the 7-Eleven to buy a bag of gummy bears and a vitamin water. I've watched a man on fire pull a pistol from his belt and shoot himself in the side of the head. I've watched a man cut a dolphin in half with a machete, leave it divided in the shallow pink water, while he does the same thing to another dolphin. I've watched a man with eyes like goat eyes chew off his thumbs. I've watched a boy take his own life because he thought his one true love was dead, but then she wakes up, looks around. I have seen a horse break its leg in a race, the bone sticking out like a skeleton's finger. And then someone came over and shot the horse, just like that. One of the last things we ever talked about, you and me, was that movie Human Centipede. You wouldn't stop calling it a masterpiece, and I was begging you to tell me you were joking. If there's anything to be learned from this, maybe it's that sometimes death can be a way out. You come to an unscalable wall at the end of a narrow alley. There have been people chasing you for years. A clean little door drawn in chalk on the side of a brick building that suddenly, somehow opens. Who wouldn't step inside that improbable jam, lay down on the ground for a minute? Love in the Time of Cards Against Humanity. Edith, once again I found myself accidentally rocking out to the Christian radio station while alone in my car. Meanwhile, on NPR, the world was running out of water. Meanwhile, the world was at war. When I'm in love, I find myself having more stake in the world, suddenly terrified of war drafts, drunk drivers, dormant volcanoes, the inevitable heat death of the universe, microbes in the water supply, the precarious nature of icebergs, biblical plagues, pretty much anything they talk about on the news. On the news, they talk about an Instagram picture of a young boy holding up the severed head of a soldier. His father stands next to him, holding another head. In another place, 15 people are killed as they sleep on the floor of a school. Little kids asleep on the linoleum, then not. Little kids with other people's blood on their t-shirts. Little kids who dream about bombs. When I wake up before him, I put my head on his chest and listen to make sure his heart is still sloshing around in there. I didn't ask to have this much to lose, Edith, I didn't. I find solace in the idea that one day we'll find another planet to start over fucking up. I want to raise my children there, each in their own little indestructible silver pod. I can't imagine how many disposable coffee cups I've gone through in this life, how many pounds of cherries I've let rot in the fridge. All day today, I lay on the sofa, drinking La Croix in the air conditioning, getting bummed out about a pair of earrings I can't afford on eBay. This morning, I woke myself up crying. In my dream, my iPhone had a cracked screen. What small death shines up from the dirt? I think I've been trying to replace you, Edith. Lately, I've lit fires in my mouth that can only be put out with another mouth. He and we found a baby rattlesnake injured in the middle of the road, half its body stuck to the black top, the other half looping around and around its own busted part like a busy signal. He said, "The babies are the most dangerous." Everyone knows that, I said. But still he had to stop me from wrapping the leftover part of the snake up in my t-shirt and carrying it home. I thought if I saved it, it would be so grateful it wouldn't try to hurt me. Edith, I'm afraid I can only love myself if someone else loves me first. One time I let him have me against the sink in a TJ Maxx bathroom, and we didn't even leave our merchandise outside. One time I was so afraid of sharks, I had a panic attack in a paddle boat while my cousin yelled at me over and over, "We're in a goddamn lake." Once I saw reflected in the sky 100 of my own heads on wooden stakes, but they were tiny, like a tray of hors d'oeuvres. One time I had a dream that the dog ate you and choked on your beak and also died. One time I thought I loved someone I hardly knew at all. Long ago, I saw a hawk in a tree disemboweling a baby prairie dog. I was with a child, and instinctively I put my hand over his eyes so he wouldn't have to see. But the guts, Edith, I couldn't take my own eyes off them. How they shone in the dirt like wet rubies, or like something you didn't know you were even looking for in the moment when you finally find it. I had this dream about kayaks and you were in it. Sometimes grief is chief. Sometimes there are chiggers in the tall grass out where you're walking the dog in your nightgown. Sometimes nothing comes up Meg for days on end. Some nights you can't even see the moon, or it is so smudged out by ghosts you can't tell where it even really begins. When I first found out that most of the stars we see are already dead, I took it very personally. I have been told I am the kind of person who takes things personally. Sometimes the dog gets out at night and she is black and she runs around in the street with the tires of cars just missing her, and I feel like my heart has been divided in two and half of it is inside her, and I am angry that she is being so reckless with it. But she'll never really understand what it means to anticipate a loss. She just wants some good sniffs and doesn't know why I'm always trying to keep her from what she wants most. I've been having those kinds of anxiety nightmares where he and I are trying to get to the airport, but we have to take a kayak there and end up in a very high-traffic kayak area. Our kayak bangs against the others. Filthy water sloshes up into my lap. My traveling outfit is, of course, ruined. The couple next door, trying to fuck their headboard through my bedroom wall at dawn this morning, hadn't any idea that I recently broke up with someone. They just thought they were being the regular kind of inconsiderate. Sometimes in the morning you haven't even opened your second eye yet, and already you're texting your ex-boyfriend to tell him about the dream you had about kayaks. Sometimes in your sleep, you'll get a bloody nose and swallow all the blood, wake up once your stomach gets full to throw it up. Last night at Walmart, the couple in front of me in line was buying a single Slim Jim to share. I missed him so much in that moment, it felt like I was full of collapsing stars. A deep, round ache accompanied by regular, sharp stabs, like being in a bathtub full of crushed ice with little bits of glass mixed in. I could feel it in my teeth. I could feel all the blood moving through me with great effort, like it was full of seeds. The worst thing about endings isn't the ending itself, but the beginning again. How tiring it is to retell and retell that story about the scar on the palm of your hand. How you climbed a fence to skinny dip in a swimming pool at night when you were 22. How you made it into the pool just fine and felt so much joy splashing around in the water. How climbing the fence a second time to get out, that's when everything went wrong.
My name is Kimberly Lambright, and let's see, super happy to be here. Thank you, Andrew. I've been living in Austin for almost 3 years, and before that, I was in Brooklyn, before that Portland, so kind of lived everywhere. I got my MFA at Eastern Washington, and my first book is coming out this fall from 42 Miles Press. I'm really excited about that. The poems that I'm going to be reading are mostly new work. I've sort of turned a corner in my work. I've been really inspired by kind of old school sonnet / Annie Dillard forms. Not that Annie Dillard writes sonnets, but yeah, just some sort of like naturalist, pre-nature feeling that I've been writing lately in my work, and maybe a little bit more mystical and less personal, or the personal that is within the mystical, maybe. Valle de la Luna. Polar camplight beams back the surrounding tube of winter as I close your mouth with my mouth, coy joyfulness I learned in preschool, prehistoric now in this mob. We were talking about the moon's experiential function, the mode of texture. Where are you? Erstwhile, I fled through the broad dark, at home in the leaned glass. In recovery. The bigots are talking about divine rescue and tossing confetti, stepping out of vanilla land. Yawning among the UFOs, we were young, sitting on the cooler at that warehouse New Year's party, kissing. Blueberry pie somewhere in Bushwick, eroding moon shading your inspirational hair, thin volume of Gestalt theory under your arm. I try to be substance over style, although my soft grunge needs like mercy into the felted back seats. A postmodern tabulation in lavender-tinted aviators. I'm washed out, but I'm ultimate. Patagonia. 1. Jawline. The evening's landfall blue, the Andes unbuckling. I tended to be rigid within the basalt, the burnout. No, I don't want to party. Take your white eyes to the broken sea. My thinking follows a line, logocentric, beneath your situation. 2. Floral parka. The hikers traveled widely, speed and lucking. The heritage form, I remained cold at the medieval furnace, wanting to establish an archive of elected hummingbirds, structuralism, of buttons sewn and replete. 3. Green-white. It blows so hard when you're alone. You can hear the blown worlds wafering by you. I stuck 3 pancakes in your hand and begged. You palmed my shoulders to the canyon wall. Like everyone, I spent the first half of my life in bed with the overlord. 4. Trill. My slag. Drawn to the orographic winter within. My face is modern. I'm trying to say everything in the mint wash of my modern face. Banquet. Junk around the drug table. Dark corn. My body remains unlaced. The juiced brain of just desire. Coy burden. What have you stolen that you can give back? North Loop. The light tricks real shade on Survival Island. Realms of coconut groves take care beside an Atlantic as unlocked as I am becoming. My pounded wonder topples gold. Denned indoors still, the dark rolls over the mood water to remove love.
My name's Kathleen Reeves. I teach high school English. I've lived in Austin for a little over 3 years now, and I'm really glad to be here. I've been writing poems and short stories for about 10 years. I read at an Aural Lit reading last April, and that was really the first time I had read my poems to a group of people, and it was a really powerful experience, and I'm very excited to be doing it again, and I'm really happy about this series. In college and in my early and mid-20s, I mostly wrote short stories. I wrote some poems several years ago, just a few, and then I really just started writing poems seriously a couple years ago. I'm really glad that the Austin Public Library is doing this series because to me, a poem is so radical. It's incredibly simple. I love that we all get to come together once a month and listen to the work of poets in the community. Houses. She floated over the infinite sea until she was submerged. Then the public zoo. Animals, danger, confinement. A creeping boredom with confusing glimpses of the sky. The sunsets made her long for the past the difficult part, past the sickness. It's the simplest thing, said the woman on the bus. The sky is cold and empty. Dust and trash, a bird small at its edge. When I remember, she says. She's not my enemy, she says. It's the simplest thing and the most difficult. In this city, the streets are different. All the gates lead to houses from memory, houses unknown. Restaurant. Talk about something you've read to give a sense of possibility. Make us forget our limits. Think about all the countries, evolution, the glaciers, the internet, the future internet. I want to understand the relation in this moment. I want to taste something. Her father loves her but doesn't understand her. Her boyfriend understands her but doesn't love her. Her brother-in-law says, freedom comes through discipline. He doesn't like her ideas. He thinks he's creating his identity. Biology, new markets, ethics, the state, self-knowledge. She cried on the plane ride here. She believes in her father and mother. She believes in enlightenment. Outside, the animals have gone to sleep. A smashed paper cup blows across the parking lot. Things coming full circle. The circle is a mystery. Darkness and light. I think it's important to be awake, but maybe it's just as important to sleep, to let a stranger carry you away. I'm confronting the desire to be perfectly healthy, to radiate positivity from the entire being. It's a little bit arrogant. What do I know about the 60s anyway? I have to keep telling this story even as the elderly die and the middle-aged die and the young die. I'm going in when I should be going out. I'm cleaning 3 square inches of countertop. I'm afraid of my email, the door, sleep, the morning. Afraid that I will be afraid. Sometimes nothing will put you to sleep. You have to lie there utterly alone. I care about the exact time something happened, especially in the dark hours between 3 and 6. But there are many things I never finish. There are many things I can't imagine. Snail ride. My lover is the snail that arrives below my window. He takes me to a sharp pink sunset place where we can finally discuss the great disappointment of our lives. But then the ground shakes. The people inside and outside all the buildings shake, and the earth itself shakes. I'm about to say we're getting older, and I forget it and say nothing. The pages become invisible, so all that's left is our thoughts. Our thoughts become bodies. We are finally born. Lone. Below, a dark-skinned hell. Above, those who are like us but limited. The man who kills the giant animal plants the knife. His house will live forever. The desert will bloom green. The boat runs on to the end of the lake. There is no end. Over lands and waters, the edges of the republic, forever expanding, forever delivering the brave man back to its center. Says God and stands there without him. The sky turning purple over the lake, the wake fanning out forever. Whiteout. Like the dream of turning the corner and entering a landscape of snow. Looking for the city and ending up in a town close by, trampling on roses the size of a baby's head. Something about potential, entering a new program. The evangelical youth minister can't stop thinking about Mary's birth canal, and this confusion is also part of the suffering of Mary. Having people talk about her this way. Like my grandmother who had 4 daughters in the 50s. I interviewed her about her life. Was there something else I was supposed to ask? I think there was. The room with the little doors. Everything is serious and final. Every move he makes is alone. The world of other people is not his world. The sun is always disappearing. So he repeats the day, repeats the tasks, fills his glass again in the room with the little doors. Dead crow flying. I crossed a bridge over a river. Beyond the bridge was a tree full of crows the size of dogs. I caught one and held it gently. I broke its neck. The crow flew away as a transparent crow, a spirit crow, calling back to me obscenities, deep hurt cries, threats on my life. I'll kill you, you bitch. A soft, mournful cry, a tearful cry, undone. But that crow was dead.
Thank you for listening to the second episode of Aural Literature, and please check out local writers in the future.